Welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of Fox Sports Detroit's Fantasy Frenzy. What's going on, everybody? I'm Dennis Farrell, back again for another season of fantasy baseball and football information to help you through your fantasy leagues. A lot of stuff to get to, but first, remember you can always follow me on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell. That's where you can get all of your podcasting news from myself, shows, guests, fantasy updates right away. Remember that, guys. Also, I'm doing year-round football and year-round fantasy baseball on my Twitter feed. Head over there at any time. And if you do have a fantasy question that you want answered on the Fox Sports Detroit's Fantasy Frenzy, feel free to send me an email at dennis77farrell@gmail.com, and I will make sure your question gets asked on air eventually. All right, let's hit some fantasy baseball because I got fantasy football I also like to talk about. A lot of stuff going on. As you know, a lot of ADPs, average draft positions, recommend avoid drafting closers at all, really. If you're quick on the waiver wire, you can snag about 4 or 5 good closers early in the season. Oakland Athletics are dealing with a closer issue. I'm pretty sure Joe Nathan's not going to stay the Detroit Tiger closer for long. You have 2 of those guys that could make changes. Sergio Romo, who's a setup man in San Francisco, could easily take that job back later this season. There's number 3. So just be smart in your draft days. Draft low-value closers at the end. Treat them like kickers in fantasy football, okay? Don't overdraft for one of those guys. Also, if you miss out on one of the big-name shortstops and you're panicking, don't worry. There's a guy like Jimmy Rollins you can snag a little bit later. He's going about the 11th round in 12-team leagues. It's about 142 overall. I have him projected for about 16 home runs, 66 RBIs, 22 stolen bases, 77 runs, about 269, 270 batting average, right somewhere about there. He's not the sexiest name out there. He's not the youngest name out there, but in that Los Angeles Dodgers bat lineup, he will be a producer, and he will not cost you a lot. Avoid Matt Harvey. I know right now he's gangbusters in spring training. People love him, and he's going way too early, about 57th overall. But remember, he's coming back from Tommy John surgery. He'll have his ups, he'll have his downs, but he'll also be on a pitch count. So if you do draft him early or you get auto-drafted, just know after like his first amazing 7 innings, 12 Ks kind of performance, trade him away for whatever you can get. Not whatever, but you'll be able to get a high price at that point and won't be pitching desperate. But make sure you move him quick because you could be left holding the bag on a guy whose innings run out and you're in the middle of a fantasy playoff push and you need him the most. He won't be there. Look at Steven Strasburg like the last 5 or 6 years. So keep that in mind, fantasy players. JD Martinez, I know this is Fox Sports Detroit. I got to throw a Tiger in here. Here's a guy that's going about the 8th round, and I absolutely love his value. I have him projected for 277, 23 home runs, 80 RBIs this season. Go snag him quick. If you're pitching desperate, there's a ton of guys out there. You can get Matt Wieters, who's coming off of Tommy John surgery. Won't affect him at all. Don't worry about that. But you could get him in like the 14th round. And if you're kind of a batting average hungry kind of guy, keep an eye on Yadier Molina. Getting older, I know, but in redraft leagues, age do not mean much at all. Keep that in mind. This is a guy that's going about the 10th, 11th round in 12-team leagues. I have him projected for about 305 batting average, 14, 13 home runs, about 60 RBIs. Nothing sexy, but the batting average can help bring your lineup up, especially if you have a third baseman or a shortstop that's a 260 hitter and you need to, circumvent that with another higher batting average guy. Yadier Molina could be your guy that will, help your batting average rise a little bit. Brandon Belt, if you miss out on a first baseman, I don't recommend going through the whole season with him, but here's a guy that could get you 22 home runs, 70 RBIs. He's not being drafted at all. He can help you if your first baseman goes down. I do like him for power a lot. And Pedro Alvarez, listen, if you're one of those guys that had Adam Dunn every year for the 25 to 30 home runs and the 190 batting average, this is your guy. He's the new age Adam Dunn. He'll get you 240, 27 home runs, 80 RBIs, and he's going about the 7th round. So if you need power and RBIs, keep an eye on Pedro Alvarez. Don't let the batting average scare you away. It's horrendous, don't get me wrong, but the power is legit. And some news and notes before we get into fantasy-based football. Sean Doolittle has taken his first steps in playing Catch Friday. As I mentioned earlier, he probably won't start the season. I expect him back till mid-May, maybe June. So keep that in mind. Victor Martinez felt some knee soreness after his game on Thursday. I'm very concerned about this, guys. And if you drafted him hoping for another amazing year, keep an eye on this knee. He says it's something that he might have to deal with year round, and I don't like it one bit. That's enough to scare me away and may start exploring a trade. So keep that in mind. All right, fantasy football. Who all got caught into the free agent frenzy? And as you look over here to the side or this side, whatever it pops up, you'll see a list of of free agents and trade moves that just getting your mouth watering, getting you ready. But I'm going to give you a lowdown on a couple of these guys, and throughout the next couple of videos, I'll also, throw in different guys and give you my takes on some of them. But the bigger names like Jimmy Graham going to Seattle, tight end is not very deep. So I still have him ranked about number 2. I could see Greg Olsen overtaking him there and dropping him down to 3. What concerns me is he goes from an offense that passes the ball 43% of the time in games to one that goes to 23% of the time. And they're not going to change the offense for Jimmy Graham. I expect him to be a huge red zone target. I think his catches per season will drop. His yards will drop, but his touchdowns will maintain. I like him for 10-plus touchdowns a season, but I think if you're expecting 800 to 900-yard seasons, those days are gone in Seattle, unless that offense drastically changes. So keep that in mind when you draft, many moons from now. LaShawn McCoy, I have him as a top 5 running back, even in Buffalo. Rex Ryan loves to run that ball, and that's why they gave up Kiko Alonso, who was a stud linebacker. In mock drafts right now, he's not being drafted as a top 5 guy. Jump all over him. If you're, for whatever reason, drafting early, draft this guy hot and heavy. He is going to be the DeMarco Murray this year, where all of his productions came off the amount of touches. I think you could see LaShawn McCoy lead the league in touches, lead the league in catches for running backs. I love him a lot. Now, talking about DeMarco Murray, I'm a little bit concerned with him going to Philly. They also signed Ryan Matthews. When healthy, Ryan Matthews is a very serviceable running back. And they still have Darren Sproles there. So this is a backfield that got crowded really quick. DeMarco Murray will be drafted very high. People will be, salivating at what he did last year mixed with being in Philly, but I'm not buying it right away. I think this move helps Ryan Matthews and hurts DeMarco Murray more. But if Murray, for whatever reason, falls to the end of a first round, sure, I'll draft him. But I'm not taking him in the first half of any fantasy drafts going into the season. One of the big winners for running backs is Frank Gore. Listen, this is a passing offense, but if you're old like me, 37, you'll remember the days of Robert Smith in Minnesota where the guy touched the ball 12, 10 times a game, but he was getting 80, 90 yards a game because the holes were so wide open with Randy Moss. This is going to be that situation where Frank Gore's touches per game will go down, but the production's just going to be monster. This guy is going to be, maybe could lead the league in yards per touches. So keep an eye, and his value is going to be very low. C.J. Spiller in New Orleans, if you're in a PPR league, I love that move where he goes there. And wide receiver-wise, the big winner, Andre Johnson. This is a guy who had nobody throwing to him last season. He still ended up with 85 yards, 85 catches, 936 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The catches will go down. The yards could stay the same. The touchdowns will go up. And I absolutely love Andre Johnson there. A couple down players. It wasn't roses for everybody this offseason. Jeremy Maclin going to Kansas City. I kiss any value he has goodbye. I have him in a keeper league, and now I'm worried about that. He's going to be like Dwayne Bowe all over again. Brandon Marshall to the Jets. If you're in a PPR league, sure, the catches are going to be there, but with Geno Smith, I have a better chance of throwing this guy a touchdown this season, so don't buy into the fool's gold on that situation. Some news and notes from the NFL that will affect your fantasy drafts. Oakland, listen, Trent Richardson's there now. Latavius Murray's there now. They're both going to be competing for the starting job. Murray will definitely win it. We all know what happened to T. Rich last season. I love Latavius Murray going into the season. Jordy Nelson had off-season hip surgery. Uh, Not an issue right now, but something to keep an eye on come draft day. I know it's going to be hard to pass him up, and I don't blame you, but just keep that in the back of the mind. Off-season hip surgery, something that might come back and bite him. Listen, my prediction is Minnesota will not trade Adrian Peterson. They've come out and said it. I truly believe it that he will at least start the season, maybe play a few games for them so they can get their money's worth, sell their jerseys, and maybe trade him if a big injury comes down. But it's going to take a king's ransom to get him. And listen, I'm going to draft him in the middle of a first round. I no matter where he goes, he will have amazing value, even in Minnesota. And finally, Victor Cruz probably will miss the start of the 2015 season. Coach Coughlin came out and said that he doesn't believe that Victor Cruz will be ready. And, a lot of people will shy away from him come fantasy draft day. But once again, here's another guy I love with Odell Beckham Jr. growing up very quickly into a top tier fantasy wide receiver that will only help Victor Cruz, especially in PPR leagues. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out here for another Fox Fantasy Frenzy. Hopefully I gave you your money's worth because it was free. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell. Facebook friend request me. We can be BFFs. Dennis Farrell, Farrell. And if you have a fantasy question, you can shoot me an email. Dennis77Farrell at gmail.com. Guys, good luck and have a great season. I'll see you opening day.